Homegrown is a creativity and wellbeing program for women who are in the justice system. Homegrown is building a community that values lived experience and supports women to take space for ourselves and find ways of sharing our stories through different art forms. This audio journey has been crafted with love by the Homegrown Collective. We created this podcast to control our own narrative, to tell our own stories, to be who we are on our own terms. Each episode you'll hear more about the work we do and the community we are building. Ha ki roto, ha ki waho, ha ki roto, ha ki waho. No mai ngā hua, no mai ngā pai, no mai kia nui, kia hāwere ai. Welcome all things that have grown, welcome all things that are good. May they be plentiful and abundant.
So hi everybody, kia ora, welcome to this week's episode of our audio journey, Homegrown Take the Space. We were just sitting around a table in the Homegrown headquarters asking ourselves, when did we first meet each other? I know when I met you guys.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. It was a program.
I know when I met you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was significant.
Self-care. On self-care, yeah, when I came up to visit.
Yeah. And you came in with all this homegrown stuff, and I was like, nah. And it was you that was like, you have to do the thing. You have to do the thing.
You're going to love this.
Yeah.
Because you'd done the program in 2019.
Yes.
So that was like your second program, eh?
Third. It was
Third
my
program.
third program. Yeah, so I was on your very first program. Yep.
Yeah.
And continued on. So.
Yeah. And I met you up at on the other program several years before. So how did you guys meet?
So I think I had seen you around a lot.
Yeah.
Because you were that... You were that pretty girl that all the girls loved. Do you know that pretty girl? But I don't think we officially met and became close until we lived with each other in self-care.
Yeah, but we hung out at school. We went to school
yes, that's
together.
right.
What's school and what is self-care?
School is like this super privileged space that we had to write a lot of letters and get a lot of help from people within corrections. One for us to be able to get into uni. So they big advocates on level 1 and 2, but anything past that you have to work really hard to try to prove that you can do that. So when you get to do that and you're allowed, then you get to go to study, which we just called school, which was an hour, 2 hours.
Oh, if that, once a week.
Yeah, once a week, where you get to go to the computer suite, which, because you can't type your assessments in your cell, so you would write them all and then you would do as much as you could while you're in the computer suite. And they brought a volunteer tutor used to come in and help us with that. Yeah.
So you're both at uni while in prison.
Yeah. So, and we were actually, I don't know if you know this, but we were like two of the first people in where we were to do uni. And because we were in different units at the time, they had to get all this paperwork signed that we could mix together and actually be able to study together. So
we were going to kill each other.
And then they try to take that away like quite a few times. Oh, no, they're different units, they can't mix. So.
Right, so if you can't mix, then you couldn't go to school together. Yeah, I see.
So you're basically just studying by yourself, and you don't have anyone to ask because you're not allowed to be in contact with the uni directly. It has to go through a corrections officer. So it's very, very isolating. And it's extremely hard. So, if you're not prepared to do the work by yourself or even understand what you're doing, there's no one to ask. So it's very challenging for other people to be able to do.
And what you do is you get like these notepads in the prison and you'd write down like, can you please Google this, and then the officer in the wing at the time would literally type what you said and print you the things and assume that was enough and that you had to make that enough. That was your resources.
Yeah.
That was it.
So you would
That is a hard way to do university, right?
Yes.
That's the struggle.
So and in self-care, when you say self-care, what does self-care mean?
So South carers are like proper little houses with bedrooms and kitchens and all of that, all those things that you go to when you're in the last stages of your sentence. So it's supposed to help reintegrate you back into the real world by letting you do the things that you need to do in life, like your own washing and your own cooking and all the things that you haven't done for your whole sentence.
Right, so programs and that self-care sort of go hand in hand, like in terms of prepping you for the outside.
Yeah.
Right.
So prepping very loosely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get on a project or a program? How do you get on one if you're in self-care?
So to get to, once you're in self-care, you're going to probably get on any program that you like because they're going to try and reintegrate you as much as you can. But at the beginning, so to get to self-care, you have to complete all your programs. You have to be considered ready for the outside world to get to self-care. So you normally go into the parole board. So we changed that rule. So we went before parole. But yeah, so we weren't, technically we had to get a whole pile of things overridden to be able to get there. But
that's right. It was massive. It went on for months, eh?
Yeah. And it kind of upset everybody else in the prison because why do they get to go?
Yeah.
Is this that consistent inconsistency things?
Yeah.
That's exactly what
okay.
it is.
I didn't know you'd heard about that before.
It feels like the golden rule of prison experiences is that everything is inconsistent, but it's consistently inconsistent.
Oh my gosh, wait, prisons are run like that?
Yeah. Okay, so you've got to go through all those hoops to get to self-care, and then you're pretty much guaranteed to get on a program.
Yeah.
But like, are there people that have to sign that off? Like, like with Homeground, you know, we don't really have any control over who comes on a program.
Yeah.
But like, how do you see that working in terms of getting on a program?
So when we're down in the main jail, so you go when you're in jail, you have a meeting with your case officer, who's someone who says, okay, these are your offences and these are the programs that you're going to do to meet kind of your reintegration needs.
So your parole sort of
rules. So that might be like kōwhiritanga or there's all these sorts of things. That's mostly
DTU.
corrections.
yeah, drug treatment unit.
Yeah.
So all of those sorts of things. But
Which
then
they don't have anymore, but anyway. That's a side note.
another
Sorry,
story.
That's another story.
podcast.
Yeah.
And they make those. And then they sometimes are like, is there anything else that you've heard about that you might want to do? And you could be like, oh, I've heard that there's this arts program, or they might offer it to you. But if you don't know about it, it's one of those things, if you don't know, you don't know, and you don't know until it's too late because someone else is like, oh, I've got to do the thing, and you're like, what fucking thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so it's...
I hear that a lot. We get letters, and they're like, someone said that something was happening and it happened, and now can you send us some stuff because it happened?
Yeah. And we didn't get to do it.
Yeah, we need to do it. Okay, cool. So,
And
right.
then, so you have jobs. Well, a lot of people have jobs in there. And then you have to... And sometimes if you're going to do a course that's long, you're like, oh, you have to quit your job. And then a lot of people don't have support on the outside. So that affects that. So sometimes they're like, I need to work because I need my $14 this week because...
Yeah.
I want to call my fams.
People don't understand how expensive prison actually is to be in, you know? Like a bottle of conditioner, which you don't get, is like $12.90 now or something for like 250 mils. So it's actually very, very expensive for your family on the outside if you're not getting support. So
so
if you can't work because you're doing programs.
Sure. So if you do it right, and if you do a program, then you can't work.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
And so you said that parole or your like terms and conditions of your sentence might dictate what programs you can do. Can you always choose? Like, are those programs happening all the time?
No.
Is it
No.
God,
no. Especially now. I mean, programs. So pretty much the prison shut down for quite a few years because of COVID, and then it kind of extended because of the staffing shortage, I think it was. So people couldn't get in the prison to be able to do programs that you had to do full parole to be able to get released. So people, were just staying in prison longer because they couldn't get the things done they needed. Yeah.
Yep.
And people with like longer sentences, they just have to sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait, and then it'll be the last I don't know, 18 months where they're like, oh, okay, let's try and get you on a program now.
Yeah.
So you where you would think, I mean, for my brain, you would think you'd get them onto these courses that make them address their offending and actually think about what's gone on and then work on that for the next 8 years or however long, 17 years if they're, like the big sentences.
Yeah.
But like I can think of a few lifers that I know that have got long lags who have done nothing. Nothing, and been in there for
100%.
more than 10 years.
And they're not allowed to either. And also, a lot of people go to jail with huge drug addictions. You just get thrown in there, and even if you're asking for help, look, I need help with this. If you've got a long sentence, well, there's nothing we can offer you.
There's something Cedar Lashley always said around having a suitcase of hope. The trick to people taking control and ownership over their life is them having the choice and the timing they need. So if they open up that suitcase and they go, today I need to deal with my addictions, they need to be able to do that today.
Yes.
And you're talking about like 16, 17 years of no treatment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so can anyone say yes or no to you being on a program?
Yeah.
Everybody. Everybody but you.
There's even like, say if we were on a course together and I said, actually, she really triggers me because of my blah, 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 then that's a conversation and someone's going to get off.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like all this sort of weird hierarchy kind of control that you don't even see, or?
Yeah. But it's just that, when you put a whole pile of criminals in the space of one another and one person's like, no, I'm going to beat that person up because of this, they have to
choose safety. Do no harm.
Yeah.
It's a good rule.
That is a great rule.
Okay, so when we talk about all these different programs, and obviously it's tricky getting on them, off them, around them, whatever. Yeah. What's good about having programs inside? Obviously, you've got addictions treatment or healthy parenting or kōwhiritanga, but what for you socially is good about having those programs inside the prison?
So it's a real moment of remembering what the world is like.
Yeah.
So the prison world and social norms within that space is it's so warped to what is real.
Yeah.
And then when people from the outside come in and they're like, hey, we're going to do this, and you're like, kind of forgot about that. Or they bring glitter, which is super banned in the prison, but if they bring glitter, you're like, yes, sparkly shit, or people that laugh, there's like it's different, hey?
Yeah.
It's like,
I remember the first time I got in trouble was because I was laughing too much and I was too happy, and so the officers thought I was on drugs and they went and took me to get drug tested, which I wasn't. But
don't you dare be happy in the
prison. No laughing aloud. You're supposed to be miserable and depressed the whole time. Yeah. And so that is your punishment.
So when you think about that good stuff from programs, is there any bad stuff about programs?
Sometimes programs can be a little confronting because you're sitting there telling your whole, a lot of the trauma stuff comes up, because 80% of the women in prison have massive trauma. So, and because you're sitting around discussing your life, a lot of time that comes up, and that's hard to deal with in that space because there isn't actually added support around trauma and that type of things. So they can be tricky in that way, but it's also very, it's very supportive to be around other people and other women that can relate to what you've been through too. So there's like a solidarity in that type of conversation as well.
Cool. Okay. So how do you reckon programs could be better?
If they were more accessible, if there was more of them, if the amazing programs that with the people that come in who are volunteers, if they actually get paid for what they're doing and what they're worth, because that is so important.
Continuity. That's one thing I do know is so Homeground loved it. At first I was like, no. And then I loved it, and it makes you feel something different. Yes. It makes you feel your feelings again.
It makes you feel like you're a human.
Yeah, it's very rehumanizing, and then it goes away, and then you kind of sit there like, oh, it's like
it's sad. Yeah,
it's like something that's making you a person again, not a PRN number. Yeah, you're personalized, and you're allowed to be your authentic self, and where you're. Where your weird artsy side is allowed to just be, And then that just gets gone, and then
you miss it.
Yeah. And you kind of grieve for that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
you do. That was a beautiful way to explain that. Yeah. But even like, we did our first program together, and then by the time I started going to paroles, you were at all my paroles, giving support. Like, I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't been able to do that program with you.
And that program with Homeground is a privilege. This isn't something that so people that would benefit from this, especially the high security women, people that have had the really rough childhoods, who don't have education because they don't know, so they don't communicate well, and they communicate with violence, and all of those women that are never going to get to know Homeground, or never going to get to feel that rehumanizing experience throughout Homeground because of something that wasn't in their control when they were young. So yes, they act out and they have behavioural issues, but they're never going to get Homeground. They're never going to get to self-care. They're never going to get these things because they're never going to be in a supported enough space where they get to have those rehumanizing experiences. So unless that goes to, we're going to work with this person one-on-one, that's probably the only way that the prison would allow it. But that's not going to happen.
No.
Because, yes.
Yeah, and I think we just did a blat in remand where we do 1 hour at a time of programming, and you can see how desperately it's needed in there.
Yes.
But the culture of remand is that, it is chaotic, it's inconsistent, it's got all of those markers that make all your traumas be triggered. So it is a consistency is how we can do better. So you've had this sort of program, experience where you're doing education, you might be doing some arts and other things, and then you get released. So you meet your parole terms and conditions, you come out back to the community. What's the community follow through like? Like, is there anything on the outside that matches the inside?
No. No, there is not. No. The outside is like the completely different world to everything that you have just experienced on the inside. Altogether. And when you're on the inside, you get taught that your parole officer is like your anchor when you get outside. The person that's going to be your guiding light. They're going to help you through the reintegration process. They're going to make you understand the world again because that's their job. But
Is it the probation officer?
Probation officer. Yeah. Probation parole officer, the same thing. Yeah. But you know what? There is some probation officers that 100% are like that, but there's also some that are not. That make your reintegration so much harder because I don't know why. Maybe they feel like you shouldn't be out or something. But so what you get taught inside is not the reality when you finally get out here, and then you kind of got to reassess that and realign how you think and feel about things, depending on the parole officer that you have.
And what about you? Do you think the same kind of?
I'll speak to a personal experience. So I brought as much prison with me as I could. So I kept Homeground. I was really lucky to continue counselling with my ACC counsellor who I had in prison, and I still see her now. So I had real continuity there. So I saw her twice a week. I was touching base with you guys, and I ended up in a relationship with a prison officer who subsequently lost her job because of that. But I brought a prison officer home, and I kept prison with me. So I had the ability to dodge life for a long, long time. I got to... In prison, you forget how to open a door because they open the doors for you. Oh, yes. So she just kept opening the doors for me.
Oh, wow.
And there was, like the things that I just didn't want to do or had inability to do that I'd lost in prison, she just did it.
Yeah.
So... So I brought prison home personally. If I didn't have a counsellor, Homeground, and a prison officer who I ended up living with, and I wouldn't have successfully came back into the community. I wouldn't have done it.
And so how long have you been out now?
4 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I what I don't think people realise is that you make all these supports with these people in prison who are there through your highs and your lows, through your everything. But as soon as you leave those gates, you're not allowed to have any contact with them at all. That's one of the rules. So you suddenly lose that connection and that support that you've had for so long, except for programs that do work on the inside and the outside, like home ground. But there's not many other programs I can think of that actually do that. Is there?
Yeah, because it's a massive change, right? And you've got this sort of normal on the inside, normal on the outside, but you guys are stuck somewhere in the middle figuring out what normal is. Is that right?
Yeah.
So did like a reintegration activities at were a guided, well, for mine, was a prison officer wearing civilian clothing and me being allowed to also wear civilian clothing. And you go to the supermarket and you shop to your $85 a week. Was it 85?
Yeah.
$85 a week.
Yeah, it's gone down to 75 now.
Oh.
Because food's so much cheaper than it was a year ago, 2 years ago.
So you write a list and that gets approved by the prison director and then you shop to your list.
Yeah.
So that was it. That was my reintegration. Oh, I also got to go out for a coffee date once. With an officer who was one of my favourites. So,
Yeah. So I got one reintegration outing, which was I got to go to Rebel Sport and choose some clothing for the work to release job that I had just got. So I went with an officer who was also in normal clothing who followed me around the store like I was going to steal something the whole time.
Oh, God.
Great experience.
Yeah,
It really prepared me for the outside world.
Okay, so what's... I mean, it's really hard, because this is a huge conversation you can't have in 20 minutes. But if you had to say the best thing, like the best thing about the community follow-through, what is the thing that you're like, I couldn't have done without that?
I couldn't have done without that at all. Like I would have ended up back in jail without that follow-through care, because you're in this world that's so different to the outside, to the real world for so long, and then you get plucked out of that and thrown back into the real world, and so you're like constantly overwhelmed and scrambling. But when you've got some type of anchor that's a little bit normal to what you've just been from, that's what helps carry you through to be able to assimilate to back into being a real girl, as I call it.
There's also that whole thing of like, for you to not have to be like, oh yeah, so this is my whole life, blur, and I feel like this today.
Yes.
You don't have to speak to it. You can just be like, I don't know where I get a fucking one card from.
Yeah.
Where do I get that?
Yeah. What is a snapper card?
What is a snapper and how do I use that?
Yeah.
How do I send a PDF on my fucking phone?
Yeah.
Like
how
those
do I
sorts
pay
of
for
things.
this parking?
Yeah.
I really like, because there's this assumption that you leave prison and they've got your bank account sorted.
Didn't have one.
Your wins sorted.
Didn't have one.
Your public transport sorted.
Your ID didn't
Your
have one.
ID,
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think there is an assumption that work is being done, but I mean, in your experience, was that done before you left, or did you have to sort of get through that when you first got out?
I had nothing, and I was begging them like the month prior to me leaving. I really need to get some ID, because if I get out, then I can't get my power on. I can't set up wins. I can't do these things. And they were just coming up with all these excuses. Oh, there's no staff. We can't do that. You're Australian, so it's harder, so we can't figure that out. And so I got out with nothing. Nothing after a very, very long time. So...
Tough. It's tough. So that would be a bad thing. We put that on the bad list.
But it's definitely on the very bad list.
So what could be better then? Let's go. What could be better? Let's wrap up with what do you guys reckon would be better about that program's inside-outside community follow-through?
There was more of them. They happened more, definitely. That's my takeaway from that. There just needs to be more of them.
More of them, yeah.
Where more women and prisoners are able to access them as well, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just a privileged thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what that looks like might not be what our experience of it is, but there needs to be something, especially because I kind of I really sit in that, like, I look at, like, my prison experience, I was a privileged prisoner because I knew how to make informed decision when I got there. I just did some really dumb shit to get there. But I knew right from wrong. I knew how to behave. I knew that if I just do my lag and focus on, I'm going to go to uni, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. My thought processes are so very different to people that didn't have that. So they're the people that need more support. Our experiences have ended in success, but theirs are never going to if they don't have this. Like, to be able to just text somebody and be like, hi, like, that this is my number, blah, blah, blah. Because when you get out, you don't have, like, a full contact list of people you actually like. It's like your parents and your probation officer, and that's kind of it. Like, you have to re-engage with the world. You can't text your friends from jail. Well, yeah.
So it's like it's a great big rebuild, eh?
It's
starting from scratch, rebuilding your life
with
something, eh? And then fostering those healthy connections.
Yeah, connection is so important. Yeah. Everybody wants to belong to somewhere, and as a person that's labelled as being a criminal in society, you pretty much feel like you belong nowhere. So that's why the programs are important.
Wow. Okay. Connection, sense of belonging, consistency. Love it. Thanks.
Yay.
Thanks for helping out and having that chat. Love you guys. You've got an amazing amount of knowledge that we are very, very lucky to hear from you both.
We love you too, Jackie.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Check out our social media on homegroundnz.com with links to our Facebook, YouTube and Instagram.